right, welcome everybody to Spotlight on CS Ops, where we're talking to a number of CS Ops, customer success operations practitioners, and learning what makes them tick and getting advice and all. And today, it's your hosts. I'm Matthew and John over there, and it's the two of us one on one, getting to know one another without a guest today. So, John, great to see you.
Matthew, great to see you as well. Looking sharp as always. Always got that fast bow tie on.
Um, I don't sleep in the bow tie, or I don't, wear a bow tie 100% of the time, but I do like it. So
I
we'll get
always,
the bow
I
tie
always,
out.
I always love it because fast bow ties are like the biggest thing from a strategic perspective in CS ops. It's all about the bow tie, and so
Strategic bow tie. That's true. It's true.
I always think of it as like, well, he's a fast guy. He's just he wears his, instead of wearing your badge on your shoulder or your breast or whatever, you're wearing it on your around your neck. So that's
That's
great.
right. See, I am living it and breathing it and wearing it, essentially. Yeah. So Jean, you and I have been, running circles in CS ops for a number of years. I'd love to learn something about you that's not CS ops. Tell me something that brings you joy, or a recent trip, or whatever that just has brought you joy or brings you joy when you're not doing the CS ops thing.
Well, I guess yeah. When I'm not CS opting, I guess. So I have a 10-year-old son. My son is named Luca, and we also have a doodle who's a few years old. And so Luca and Nico and I spent a lot of time out in the backcountry. We live like on the edge of town, next to the backcountry, and so lots of hiking, lots of trails. And when I'm not kind of just chasing sticks or chasing the dog around the back trail, then it'll be on my bike or my Peloton. And I cycle a
Okay.
lot, and I that's something that you and I have in common, that we both did a lot of long distance endurance training before. I don't do any training for any Ironmans now because I have a kid, a child, and a dog, and married. It's a little more cumbersome, but I do love a good like 2-3 hour bike ride. That's for sure. So, how about yourself,
Yeah,
Matthew? Like,
I was gonna say the Iron Man, which some people know. I've done two Iron Mans, but it does sort of take over your life in an unnatural way. So I'm not doing that any longer, and I'm enjoying having my life back. So uh,
but it's a cool thing because it's like, I don't know, endurance is so much like, to me, endurance not only in fitness is also the mantra in like staff and operations. And so I see so much alignment between the two, and how you train and how you like build yourself up and stuff. So it's a super cool thing.
I
um
agree that one of those mantras that I've used, and I say it as a joke, but it's absolutely true, is like I'm not terribly fast at swimming, biking, or running, but I can do them for a long time, or better, but I could do them at one point for a very long time, and yeah, that's sort of the name of the game sometimes in operations. It's just sticking with it.
mhm. What about yourself? Anything that you do on the side that when you're not CSL thing?
Well, so I do a fair amount of running yet. Nothing terribly long. It's funny, people will ask me like, "Oh, are you training for a race?" Because that used to be a very common question, and I haven't entered an event since the pandemic began. I actually did an event in February of 2020, and I remember standing there, and we had just heard about something called COVID, and I think we were all there like, are we supposed to be together? Okay, I guess we're outside. It's okay. But then since then, I just haven't felt the need. And so now I go run for fun, and I stick my ear pods in and go enjoy myself. So I do a fair amount of running, and that is cheaper than therapy. So I tell myself anyway.
That's awesome. And we all need therapy if you're an
Right? That we
but or
do.
find your outlet. I don't know if it's therapy, but find your outlet.
Yeah.
I cycle. I like to get out on the trails. You like to run, but I think that's important. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. The
So I'm curious. I got a question for you, which you and I are hosting this thing, and you and I have been talking about this for a little bit, but I'm going to give you credit. You thought of it first. So tell me, like, tell me why a podcast or why something like guests? Like, what sort of inspired you in this moment to say, I want to undertake a venture like this?
Yeah, so I think I've been very fortunate in my career. I've had a lot of mentors and a lot of people that have helped me get to grow and learn from. And I've always had this like, I don't know, someone taught me in a very early stage of my career, like pay it forward. And that, obviously you learn that a lot in different aspects as well. Like it's all over, um, in the movies and in thought leadership. And anytime you read a business book or a feel good business book, it's a lot about that and mentorship. And so that's been always a part of um, my career. I've always wanted to give back. One of the things that I started 5 years ago was the Slack channel for Gainside admins, and
Right.
it was one of the most fulfilling things. Like I'd say, like if I look back, like in the last decade, that would be right up there for one of the most fulfilling things that I did. And I didn't do too much. Like I literally was, I did create the Slack channel, and I
Now, there
pulled
might be people who aren't familiar with what you're describing. So take a moment to detail out the Slack channel.
the Slack channel. So we created a Slack channel that was for just Gayside admins, and uh, this was through COVID. It was during COVID that we started it. I always like I had a lot of conversations with people, and every time I talk to someone, there's always like this question of like, oh, we should talk more often. This is so much fun because as you meet people in your field, you're like, wow, you're doing the exact same things that I'm doing. We're working on the exact same problems. It just happens that you're on the West Coast or sorry, the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. We don't live geographically near each other, but we're in the trenches together. And I'm fortunate to have, like I said, like lots of people around me and stuff. And so I obviously have a lot of conversations with people in the field all the time. And I was like, wow, how can we replicate this for others? Because whenever I talk to someone that doesn't have that around them, like the peers and the social network, that's the one thing that they tell me all the time. It's like, oh, who else could I meet? Can you introduce me to someone else? And so I would often match make like, oh, you're working on this problem. Hey, I know someone else that's working on the exact same problem over here, match make. And just thought about it as like, well, how can we do more of that without me being the conduit for matchmaking or being like the critical path for this? Because I was like, I could do a lot more, but it's so limiting when you're having to be the one that's driving all the conversations. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I reached out to like 10 people in the community and was like, hey, I remember sending this message on LinkedIn, like, what do you guys think about creating a Slack channel? Like, would you guys be interested? And immediately, like the 10 people all said, like, yes, 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 yes. Like that'd be so cool.
Animus.
And we didn't I didn't think it was going to be like 2,000 people. I thought it was like, let me get my 10 friends. We'll start the Slack channel. They'll invite maybe 10 each, and maybe we'll get to 100 or something. So we created it. And then within a month or two, it was up to like 500. And then like 6 months later, it was up to like 1,000. Now we're over like 2,500, 2,600 or something. And it's just blown out. And I think it's always because what's been so successful about it is because we're just connecting like-minded people that in this case are in CS ops, but also are doing CS ops with Gainsight as part of their tech stack. And so, with that, when you're looking at what kind of engine are you building, and this is the type of engine that I'm running, there's just so many questions. We're all mechanics. We're all like building on these tools. And so, being able to share, being able to learn from each other just blew out the channel, which was so amazing.
People love to be connected, right? And I think people love to be connected even more with people that get it. And I put get it in quotes because there's something about joining with other customer success ops professionals where you just have a shared understanding, even if you're all at different technical levels in different companies, different industries, you sort of all can relate to too many requests and not enough bandwidth, or a customer success platform that's just not cooperating with you today, or a chief customer officer who's got completely unreasonable expectations or something, and you sort of launch into your story or your problem, and people just nod because they get it, and you have
Mhm.
that shared level of understanding. And then you can go and just crank on, can you help me with this challenge, or how would you crack this puzzle, or whatever. So on behalf of a lot of people who have connected in that Slack universe, and I am one of them, I think, who got invited to join the Mary Tribe, I say thank you for helping people to get connected.
And you know, that's been really the purpose of this channel as well. Like I think um I was wondering like how else can I continue to add or give back? Because I feel like the Slack community, it's like the child that just ran off and is now like grown up, and you're like, oh, like wow, didn't do anything. And so, and I'm still having like conversations like with yourself and you know others in the space. And so at one point, I was thinking like I should just record these conversations and post them, because there's sometimes like we talk about some super cool stuff, sometimes we don't, but that's okay too. But it's just like there's so much that I think others in the space who are new to the space or who are trying to up their game, who are trying to learn from peers, I think there's just a lot in these conversations that they can learn from. And I'm fortunate that I've been in the space for over a decade now. I don't know if I know it all. I definitely don't think I know it all, but I do feel like I've been exposed to a lot of different problems, a lot of different challenges, and you know, being able to share with that and talking to others about some of the things that they're going through. I think it's great for me to share, but it's also an opportunity for me to learn and continue learning. I've always found myself to be a student of ops, and so for me, this is equally as great for hopefully the audience, for yourself, but it's also incredibly great for myself to continue learning and driving that fulfillment in my own career. How
Yeah,
about
by all
yourself,
means.
Matthew?
I, you know, when it comes to just getting people connected, and some people know I occasionally host a CS Ops meetup in Austin, where I live. I
Which
have,
is also a very
I
great
guess
event.
that was a real humble self plug, wasn't it? But you know, I'm fortunate to live in a town where there's just enough of us that we can physically get together, and it's more than just me. Right? I can put out a call to the CS Ops crew, and there's enough of us that we can usually gather around a couple tables at the local bakery over coffee and cinnamon rolls, and just share. Like sometimes we get the laptops out. We're like, how would you do this and that puzzle, and this needs to be a field, and whatever. And other times it's like, how do I tell my executive team that, you know, this is not a great project for us to even undertake, and so I have this passion to make people their very best. uh, I've cleverly disguised in, as I do that, as being a CS ops practitioner. And so I get to help other CS ops folks, get to help my CS team at the company I work for. I get to welcome other people into our field as we continue to grow. So that is my passion, and I'm just so grateful to have found an industry, a career, an ecosystem, maybe you would even call it, where I get to do that.
Yeah, that's on it. That sounds absolutely amazing the way that you put it, and I echo so much of that same sentiment. Like it's such an awesome field to be able to share and to be able to help others grow in. So
Yeah, and we're growing, John, right? And I don't just mean we're growing in numbers. Like, okay, I mean, granted, there's 2,500 people in a Slack group, and you know, we can only aspire to have so many followers here in this little media thing that we're creating. But we're also growing in knowledge, and I'll sometimes say to people, the field of CS ops is about 5 years behind the field of customer success itself. See, it was like customer success came onto the field, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, and nobody knew what was going on or what it should be. And there's more and more formula around it and more best practices. And now I think the field of CS ops coming into its own 5 years behind customer success. And now we're figuring out what are our norms, what are our best practices, how should we conduct ourselves, and I think we're well on our way to being just as normal and just as accepted and just as foundational as a sales ops team is. We'll get there, but in the meantime we're figuring it out too, and
mhm.
I'm pleased to be among a community where It's perfectly acceptable to be figuring it out, and it's perfectly acceptable not to have it figured out yet.
Yeah, I can't echo that enough. Based on the changes that have happened even in the last couple of years with the markets completely changing, the refocus on revenue, the refocus on value and making sure that your customers are getting the impact that they need. Um, that's that's a different world than previously when money was so easy and people didn't have to focus so much on value. It felt like anyone was buying the tools at that point, or anyone was buying software at that point. Sorry. And so I think exactly as your point, things have evolved, things have changed so much over time. And it's nice to be able to share with peers and see what they think, see what's worked for them, and just yeah, hopefully learn a little bit, hopefully share a little bit, and we all become better. So,
Yeah. Now you've been at this for, I think you said a decade. So if you could tell Jean from 10 years ago something uh, across the span of time, uh, what advice would you give yourself?
so yeah, so I've been doing customer success effectively for 12, more than 12 years now. I think when I first started my first job in customer success. Previous to that, I was working in support, operations, and dealing with support teams, which is what it was more than a decade ago, right? It was all about support and not about necessarily customer success. And then I kind of I as I so I first started leading CS teams, and I ended up figuring out that I really loved building out the engine and building out the structure for driving subscriptions, making sure that people adopt and making sure that people expand. So I've got two things that I would tell myself. One, focus on the engine sooner instead of worrying about being a business leader, owning business teams. And actually, that's been one of my things that I've enjoyed the most in my career is focusing on the structure, the strategy, the processes, all of the pieces rather than focusing on building out teams of hundreds of people and having, different reporting relationships and all that stuff. I'm much more systems and strategy and just I'm a book nerd and a computer nerd, I guess, to that side of it. And then the other aspect, the other thing that I wish I maybe had known a little bit earlier in my career is building that engine, building out that structure, figuring out the right strategy. All that drives is driven by change. We're all changing, and the world is changing at a constant pace. And sometimes change is not as fast as we would love it to be. And so one of the things that I wish I had more of when I was younger is maybe patience. Because I think for me personally, I think change takes a long time and we're all impacting as we build these things out and as we figure out the right process and the right structure, it impacts the humans that are working in them. And so, understanding patience, making sure that you drive communications effectively and that you really engage the people that are going to be doing the thing that you're trying to change is yeah, definitely something that I wish I had learned earlier. I was a lot more gung ho and in the beginning and always a lot more like, why are you guys doing the thing that I said we should be doing? What's going on here? And so yeah, maybe having a bit more patience with it would have been a little bit easier for me.
I was listening to somebody, and I think it was Jeff Beaumont, formerly of GitLab fame, and I think he's doing some consulting on his own now. So if it was Jeff, congratulations, thank you, Jeff. If it wasn't, we sure would love to have you as a guest. But he said something about time and energy, and he said we underestimate, no, we overestimate how much we can get done in a day. We underestimate how much we can get done in a year.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking of that in terms of what you just said, John, about having patience or having the ability to stick with it. It's like, yeah, over time, a lot of incremental changes, you can totally change the game.
Mhm. That definitely resonates with me. I think there
Yeah.
is a lot that you can do in a year. But yeah, I tend to overestimate how much I can get done in a day for sure. But you've been in the field though for a while as well. I don't want to sound like I'm the only old timer in the room here, but you were just. I think we were talking about it the other day. I think you started about 6 months in the field with Gainsight after me, think I started in the fall of 2014 was one of the first time I ever saw Gain. I saw Gainsight walking down the street for the first time.
And
And
you swiped right,
I
and
swiped right, I
off you
guess.
went.
But how about yourself? I think you were saying like you started in the spring of 2015.
Spring of 2015, I made did my first Gainsight deployment on the Salesforce edition, um, which was great. And I actually we had done I would call it a small scale deployment of Tango for a couple of years prior. So because I was like nipping around the edges of CS ops, I just didn't have a word for it. I didn't have a descriptor for it until later. So yeah, but I usually say that Gainsight deployment was when we really got serious and really got process focused, and to your point, really decided we're going to build an engine here. This isn't just going to be maybe a piece of software that sits off on the side, kind of a point solution, but we're going to put some workflow in here. We're going to get some value out of it. So I usually go spring of 2015. Yes, as my born on date into CS ops.
The is there anything that you would tell yourself now looking back at, all the things that you've learned, all the people that you've met, shared with, like, is there anything that you would tell your younger self what to look out for or wish you had known?
Yeah, I might go a little on the practical side, which is you're going to be more than an administrator. I think very early on, and granted, my remit when I did my first game site deployment was to deploy a piece of software, right? So I was in the throes of it for several months, and so I was absolutely the administrator there. What I've learned since is that's one piece of a much larger puzzle. And so, yes, is there tooling? There absolutely is tooling, and usually several of them that are floating around in a customer success operation. But that's not your only job. And granted, there are some people who that is what they do because maybe it's a larger organization and you can specialize. But especially if maybe you're a team of one or you're in a smaller company and you end up with the CS ops moniker, uh, prepare. And this is what I would tell myself: like, be prepared that you're going to consult, you're going to build process, you're going to be looking at data. You are not just flipping switches and setting up joins and CTAs or whatever inside of a tool. So that, and then probably the second thing would be very much related, which is you are going to be CS to CS, right? You're going to be the customer success function to your customer success team. And so I get to be inspired by my CS counterparts because I know they're on the front lines every day with customers, building success plans and doing discovery and trying to find out where value lies. And I think we do exactly the same thing. So uh, I get to I get to support some people I find heroic in their work, but I get to emulate them while I do it. So it's just a sweet spot for me. Like I was saying
Mhm.
earlier, like helping people be their best, and so I'm excited to be in this field, and so I tell myself, yeah, hang in there, it's going to be fine. You're doing better than you think.
There's you touched on a couple of things there that I want to highlight a little bit. Like you mentioned, there's so many roles in DevOps, and the larger the company, the bigger the team. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some large companies where it built out large teams, and there was a tech team, there was an analytics team, there was program management team, and sometimes we're driving change, we're driving like implementation, we're implementing projects that are hoping to drive change along the customer journey. Other times we're just doing like analytics, or other times we're just upping the tech stack and whatnot. Where does your kind of career ebb and flow into that space? Like, and what does CSOps mean for you? Like, how would you define CSOps?
Yeah, so I've been guardrail to guardrail this, Jean. I've been at those large companies where there was a very large team of administrators, of Gainsight administrators, period, and then augmented by an entire team for data, an entire team for process, and then I've been a team of one where it was just the buck stops right here with the bow tie, and if I'm not doing it, it isn't going to get done. So And I've enjoyed it all. I probably favor a slightly smaller shop just because I think I get to build closer and tighter relationships and maybe have a slightly more direct line to impact. But I enjoy it all. And then when I think of CS ops, I'll oversimplify, but I do kind of go after three buckets, especially if I'm maybe talking to others in my company or in the field who are like just trying to get their arms around what it is they've stepped into. I'll usually say process roles, responsibilities is your first, and I would order these. I would specifically order these. Get your process, your roles, your responsibilities down. Second, tech stack and tooling, which should, if well done, bring to life your process roles and responsibilities. So you're operationalizing those. And then third, your data and analytics. So you've got a process, you've operationalized it, made it easier or more efficient or smarter with a tool. And now you should have some data that helps you understand, yeah, or actually are having some impact here. So more of that. And this other process is not working so well because I can see that in the data. And so what do? You end up back at the start again. So you use your data to inform yourself and then back around, forming a circle, if you will, or a triangle where I'm going around. I'm like, okay, now I can refine my process because I see from my data what works and what doesn't, what's effective and what isn't.
The I love that. That makes complete sense to me. And I often, you know, I think as CS ops people, like we can't be just pigeonholed in one thing. Like if you are just working in systems and not thinking about what's the result of this thing that I just built and how does that impact the business, then you're gonna be probably like pushed to the back corner. I don't know, maybe nobody likes to be put in a corner, including
Yeah.
baby, but
Well,
but like it
your
is
son
like the
and your
more
dog are like, we don't like to be in the corner, I'm sure.
exactly. But the more and more that you can think like broadly about the impact that you're driving, and even if it's just like a field or a new playbook or I don't know, a new journey campaign, whatever, it has to have a bigger meaning to it. It can't be just for the sake of, hey, we think this is going to be cool, whatever. Like the field has to make sense for the CSM. It has to add value to their life. They're not just going to enter data because you decided that you want a new field and if you will it, they will come. Like that's just not the reality. And so I think tying everything, I think I agree with everything you said, and then tying it all back to like where is the company going from a strategic standpoint? Like is the company trying to grow like significantly? Are they trying to 10x in the next 10 years? Are they trying to IPO? Or are they kind of like at a slow growth curve and we're trying to keep costs down and we're trying to look for more efficient ways of doing things, like whatever it is that the company's trying to do. To me, tying those things that you described, like process, the tooling, the data, all back to that, it may not have a direct line of sight. Like it may be a little bit hard to figure out how your field or your playbook or whatever workflow ties back to revenue or ties back to operational costs, but everything has an impact. Like, and so I truly believe that the more and more people start thinking broader about the impact that they're doing or the stuff that they're doing, it broadens the role of CS ops in a company. And I think it'll broaden that person's career as well because you can help companies just drive a lot more impact. So that's amazing.
I resonate with that answer and the impact. A small story, but one of the companies I worked for, we worked in sprint cycles, and so every 2 weeks there was a retrospective of um, my team, which tended to be focused on the tooling, and then the data team and some of the processing. We all presented a very agile fashion, right? Um, One of the leaders there was just insistent when we did those presentations, like you can't just explain what you did, you need to explain why it mattered. And that stop was several years ago for me, but that message stuck with me of, yeah, you're not just building a fancy process, or you're not just getting the tool to do what you need to do. There's a reason behind it. And the more I think we in CS Ops can plug into that reason, that impact, that value, whatever you want to call it, and be able to state it well and clearly and concisely, we are going to be in much better shape than if we're solely heads down, sort of plunking out our day jobs.
Hmm. I agree. No, it couldn't be more important. And I know it's tough. Like that's probably one of the things that brings people out of their comfort zone, like trying to figure out like where's the company going. When I've worked in large enterprises, I've been for like there's all these resources of places where you can find out what the CEO is thinking, like whether they're doing like talks with their shareholders, whether he's doing one of these all hands meetings, or if he's sending out press releases or any notices and stuff like that. You can really figure out and hone in on like what's making the company tick. And if you can figure out what the outcomes are for the CEO and how does that cascade down, like, and then how can you latch yourself to some of those pieces? I think it just, yeah, it brings so much more value. So yeah, it really resonates what you said as well. That's so it's great to do this show with you, Matthew. I think I'm super passionate about like help sharing and helping the next generation learn and grow in this space. You're clearly super passionate about it. I think it's going to be an exciting show, and I hope that we're able to bring in some great interviewees and able to showcase some of the great things that they're doing, and just share it with the audience out there that's kind of get into CS ops and hoping to learn a little bit more about how to become a better practitioner in the space.
Yeah, that's my hope goal. So speaking of impact, I hope that, I plan to learn a lot from some of the guests that we'll have on, and I plan to learn from folks who are going to join us on the journey. So yes, please join us. It's going to be good.
That's great. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching, and can't wait who we get next on this show. And if you have anyone, if you yourself would like to be on the show, if you have anyone that would like to be on the show, please reach out to us. You might be able to reach out to us on Slack or even on the YouTube channel. Just send us the name, send us who you think should be interviewed, and we'd love to have them. And if you really like the show, please make sure to subscribe and just check out the latest and greatest content. I have to plug that subscribe button just to make sure that you stay connected and we can connect with you guys as well.
All right. We'll see you next time, everybody.
See you next time. Take care, everyone.